Okay, so this is the third short video about starting from scratch, and this is where I left the baggage car, which I was using as a demonstration of some of the sort of basic mesh creation skills in Gmax, and I left it with the upper part of the carriage side already created and extruded by 6 inches. And of course that doesn't mean to say that by texturing it all the one colour that it all has to stay the same, because of course if we look inside we want a different colour inside. So let's have a look. We'll just select the face of the inside. Now I haven't got anything here which really represents the inside, so I'm just going to put a white inside there just to show you, because we could put something in here, colour or I don't know, some sort of pattern or whatever into this area which is not used at the moment, so it's just wasted. So we could put something in that texture which we could use for the inside face. Now first of all, what do we want to do, because we've selected just the inside face, so let's see, that's all of the faces there, so let's just see the inside face, and the first thing to do is to planar it. Okay, and it's off a bit of a skew, and that's because it needs to have its X reference reset. Well, I'll show you that in a moment. So let's just give it a white interior, just shrink it down to whatever size, don't worry that it's at an angle, and there we are, we have a white interior for the passenger car. And that's why making these meshes separately, the texturing is straightforward. If you have a complicated mesh, particularly if you've inherited a mesh which has a lot of, for example, all the detail incorporated into that one single mesh, then every time you adjust one of the faces on one part of the mesh, it will affect all of the others, and it's a nightmare. You'll never solve it. So that's why my method is separate meshes throughout that I can edit and I can adapt and change and indeed texture very straightforwardly. Just to show you about that reset, it's this one here, reset X form, and once you've done that you must then collapse the whole thing down. So if you're not ready to fix on that extrusion, that degree of extrusion, then you don't do that, you don't reset the X form. And just to see if that face is now, it's up here isn't it, that face, let's have a look, there's all the, let's see if it's now straight, and there it is, it's straight. So you can see the difference that the X form makes. It's basically making sure everything is to the correct origin and is matched up with, or I always match it up with the pivot, making sure the pivot's correct, so that when it's exported into trains it doesn't suddenly fly up in the sky or do all sorts of bizarre things. And when you get onto animation, that certainly can be the case. There's one more thing I want to show before I just make the roof, and that is what I was saying about making a plane, and it only needs to be a single segment. And what I'm going to do before I do anything else, I'm going to texture it. So this is the texture I'm using, just called it Steve. So let's texture it, and it's just about everything, all sorts of odds and ends in it. And let's now select the face, see where we are in here. Let's make sure we've only got the one face selected, planar map it, and what I'm going to do is then just by eye, well, I don't need all of it, I just need those upper ones, upper handles, and this one. Now I'm not sure if I've got the right orientation, I haven't. So what I need to do is I'm going to bring this in. The more you do this, the more you get used to doing it. The more experience, you just get, you get the hang of it. Put that back to 0. It's experience that's the key with 3D model making, I think. The more you do, the better you get. And so what I've done is I've stretched just the lettering there, Northern Pacific, which is frankly not particularly, it's pixelated. It could be much sharper. And because you're only occupying, you've got the TGA, the cost, as it were, the size of the TGA file for your PC to handle, and then a single frame here. and I'm just going to collapse all that down to a one poly. If we do a poly count, one poly, and you really are, one of your aims should be to keep the poly count as low as possible. So use the poly count wisely, use it to create detail, and don't just waste it on unnecessary detail. For example, planes which butt. If this was a two-sided plane, then the rear of this plane would be worthless, unnecessary, because it's just going to be butted up against this carriage side. So let's just move it up, and it's well in front of that side at the moment. I'm well aware of what's happening, and also I've got a bit of a bleed there, so let's just make sure we're precisely on that. So I'm going to zoom in. First of all, I'm going to change it to that, pick up that, the upper ones, zoom right in and make sure, actually I think it's the lower one that's coming over, but no, there's a bit there. We're just above that pixel. In fact, what I can do is I can come in a bit more, because if I go really deep and I invert the selection, no, it doesn't do it in this, does it? If I pick up the lower hat corners and bring that up, you'll see on the, so now in order to get the correct look of the lettering, which is much more it's not condensed like that, it's much more stretched. First of all, what I want to do is I'm now adjusting the plane, not the texture. I'm just going to stretch that right out to the full width that it's going to cover, and then I'm going to push it up. So that's cost you one poly. Now of course it's some way away from the side, so eventually what you've got to do is in top-down view, keep an eye there as well while you do it. In top-down view you need the X coordinate, bring it right in, right the way in. Where are we? Must be this bit here. Where is it? There's our box that's going right in further. I'm keeping an eye bottom right, because when the lettering starts to disappear you're too close. But I think we're alright still. I'm still moving in, beginning to disappear now, so just move it out a tiny fraction, just make sure it's all there, and that's on the maximum, virtually the maximum enlargement. Believe me, in trains you won't notice it. In fact, what you'll have is some nice lettering along the side of your carriage. And you can do that with logo. Any small details, particularly crests that appeared on 19th and up to mid 20th century rolling stock, especially in Britain and Ireland, and indeed elsewhere. Okay, so there we are. So that's that part of this tutorial, and the next bit that I want to do is how I would model the roof, and it's again pretty straightforward. So I'm just going to go into an end-on view, make sure I have texture correction on, and essentially it's going to be this bit here that we're going to do a nice curve. Let's just check to see what height we should be looking at for the side. So we got that side, it's actually positioned in the middle of the end diagram plan, I suppose. Just remind us, I can never remember these things, I always have to look it up. 11'4". Okay, so we're not going to need that anymore, we can just forget about that. You can hide it if you like, or you can move it over, but I would only move over a side once it's finished. And I'm assuming that you know that you have to obviously make the other side as the mirror image. It's no good copying this and rotating it because it's not bilaterally symmetrical, unlike this end, which if you draw a line down the middle, the left side is the reflection of the right side. 11'4". Again, I'm going to be using splines. This time what I want to do is I'm going to use an ellipse, and I'm probably going to get this wrong. Yep, but it doesn't matter because I just want to draw an ellipse. That's in these splines, that's next one along, and bring that back to 0, and then I'm going to adjust. I think we had a width, it was 10 foot, I think. There we are, 10 foot. And I'm going to bring that down until 11'4" for the middle of the ellipse, which is the height of the side. So when you do move the side, because the bottom part of the ellipse we're not going to use, I'm going to delete that. But the upper part is going to be the basis of the profile of the roof. So let's increase the vertical distance. Let's take it up to 2 foot just to try it. And go up quite a bit, 4 foot. There we are, 4 foot. That's not bad. That's a pretty good approximation. The reason why I like using an ellipse is because you've already got a very nice smoothed curve, and here clearly this diagram isn't actually bilaterally symmetrical, or the positioning I've put it onto the plane isn't correct, absolutely correct. So maybe you need to nudge it over a pixel or something. But as long as you've got one side, because you're just going to reflect it on the other, that's fine. Now obviously we've got some change here, and what I'm going to do there is I'm going to convert the ellipse into an editable spline, and I'm going to delete the segments I don't want, which are the lower segments. So I've just got a curved line here, and now I'm going to refine that line. I'm going to refine it here on this side by putting in another point and adjusting that point until I feel it's most accurately reflecting the curve. Make sure you've got texture correction on, that it most accurately reflects the curve, which is delineated by pixels, so very blocky at the moment. I think what I want to do there is to pull that out a little bit. Basically what I'm trying to do is create transition curves, which anybody who professionally lays railway track would know all about. Okay, I think that's okay, and I'm going to delete another segment now. I'm going to take this segment off. So I've only got this bit, but because that's going to be part of my roof, I'm quite happy with that. And this time I can just clone it, and have I cloned the right thing? I think I have. And now I want to rotate it. There we go. And it's rotating around the middle because, oops, there we go, because I'm looking down to the bottom right here to make sure it's 180. There we are, 180. I'm going to go into wireframe, so you can see there, that's the curve of the roof. Now obviously you can refine that as much as you like. You can spend hours refining it. I'm just doing this as quickly as possible, and I'm going to attach them together, and then I'm going to take the points in the middle and make sure they are welded together, so it's a single item. Now the choice is yours really. If you want to simply bring in a copy of this so as to make the interior of the roof, because that's just going to make an exterior, we're going to make an interior. So if I clone it and just bring it in to there, but what I also need to do is to bring the lower one of these vertices in by 6 inches, so because that's the thickness of the carriage side, or whatever it is. So if I make that 4'6", now obviously it blows this, which I've spent so much time getting right, but also what I need to do is that is lower now here. So let's just go back here, remind ourselves, because I never can remember, 11'4", that's the height here. So let's go to this one, move that up to 11'4". Okay, and basically we need to move that in 6 inches, so 3'10", 328, make it 3'4", 428, it's too much maybe. And also you haven't got the same width in the roof. Now it really depends on the vehicle that you're modelling, because if it depends on the internal profile of the roof, which can be quite different from the external profile. But I would normally leave something like that. I wouldn't make it too I wouldn't worry if there was a difference in thickness. 13'4", so really that should be here, it should be 12'10", and it's fact 13'1", so it should be another 3 inches down. So let's take it down to 13'10", that's the 6 inches there. And again, we would have to adjust this. Doesn't look right at all, so let's just remind ourselves, what's the height of this one? 12'9076", so it should be 12'3076". 12'3.076". Looks a bit poor to me. Try and improve the look of it a bit. I don't like that. What I would do is I would take this up so as to create a not bad interior roof. The other side, I'm just deleting those segments, because why do it twice? If you've already done it once, you can just do it, just clone it, and that's what I'm going to do here. Just bring out a clone. 180, that's it, thank you, and just attach that one to it, and then looking at the vertices, make sure those are welded right. So the only thing I want to do now is to bring in a rectangle, which is going to be 10 foot. I find this is better than doing a line. 10 foot long, there we are. Make sure that it's got the center mark, make sure it's centered, convert it to an editable spline, delete 3 segments. Okay, center 11'4". Remember that's the height of the wall. Well, it's not doing that because we must still have so let's take the disregard that and just take that up. Just zoom in. We're using this wall section to precisely position it. Don't know if it's going to do. No, sometimes you get a sort of like a stutter. Okay, let's put in some. I want to refine that with a couple of vertices. Okay, segment, take out the middle bit. You can see where I'm going surely with this. Let's just check we know the position here. 4'6". Okay, so this one goes to minus 4'6". And this one to positive 4'6". and let's give it a different colour. Let's make it bright yellow. And now let's add our 2 bits of roof. And now before we go any further, we need to join it all up, weld those sections together so that now it is a closed spline, which means you can extrude from it. An open spline will not extrude. The key indicator is you've only got one of these. So let's have a look at it sideways on, and we know our carriage is about 73 foot long, so let's extrude it 73 feet, 73 foot something. There's our roof. Let's center and move it over, and there we are. That's the roof made. Assuming there's no need for any holes or anything in it. Some of the carriages that I've made in the past, you had holes cut in the roof for oil lamps to be lowered in. The bane of the 19th century traveller. Collected rainwater, dead flies, didn't give any light, and dripped. So there we are. So there's the roof. You've got that as an exterior and the external roof and the internal roof. All you need to do is texture that. If you want to do things to the interior, for example, on the Liverpool overhead railway, I have put some interior, and it was on the curved internal section of the roof. There were some posters. So to make it easy, I just took a clone of this, chopped it right down until I just had the length of curved plane that was chopped from this, and textured it with a poster. There was another one I think that said no spitting, something like that. So there we are. That's the end of this starting from scratch part 3. I've shown you the way I put on detail, the way in which I create roofs. Frankly, there's not a lot more to it. There's just more of the same. You're just creating more and more meshes until you've created the whole of your carriage, and that means you need to know what goes underneath in the way of all the bits and bobs. The bogies themselves, you can just give it in the config text file. You just tell it to use the bogies from some other coach, anybody's coach, and but yours will be running, so yours will be running on somebody else's bogies, but that doesn't matter because they've been released for use in trains. The only thing you mustn't do is use payware bogies. Don't use those. Use freeware bogies. Okay, so that's it. Well, I hope that's been of interest. I'm not going to be making any more for this short series unless something else comes up, but I think that really sort of finishes the information that I can give on how to get going, because once you've got this far and you've created these, the rest is just more and more of the same. The more detail you can add in, the better it'll look. But don't spend all your sort of like the size of your TGA texture files on one massive great one that looks like it's the side of a carriage. There's no need to do that. You can get around that. If I was to, I'm not sure if I can easily or quickly open up an example, but I'll just have a quick go under models, and then under, let me see, Great Western broad gauge carriages. These are ones that I've made in the past. Passenger new stock 1880s. Gosh, there's a lot. Standard composite 5 compartments. That's our latest one, 1.2. Yeah, this was a few years back now, look, 3 years ago. So there we are. That's quite a complicated little carriage. But because and you can see there that I've got the roundel, or rather the garter, GWR garter, and that's a little separate. That'll be a little separate plane. This is one mesh, So if I hide that and just unhide, and then this texture, I think on this one, yeah, Clerestory texture, on this one I decided to do it as a single texture, so that if I was to look at that, let's select that face, you'll see that what I've actually done there is that's the whole of a carriage side. But I've also been able to use, although it's a large TGA, I've been able to use areas of it for other things as well, so that was worth spending. On another carriage, I was just looking to see if I've got another example, but on another carriage, let me see, 6-wheel compos, let's try the lavatory compo. Not sure, I may have just done these the same. Clerestory texture, yeah, I've done the same with this one. But on the ones which have much more complicated paneling, I've actually done a mesh of the panel separate to the side so that it stands out more. But in these I was obviously trying to just get around it with a single texture. So there we are. Hope this has been of interest. Please, if you have enjoyed this video, please leave a thumbs up or a comment. If you're not already subscribed to my video channel, please do so, and look out for my next contribution to YouTube.